when like I do a gay cruise, it's so funny because like they want Kathy Griffin. They don't want me, you know? And so I sometimes get more nervous in front of gay audiences than I do in front of straight audiences.
I have to tell you, I'm not curious to see Kathy Griffin on Ketamine. I love the woman to death. I just think that would be bad news for a lot of us.
Welcome to Keep It, Cricket Media's show about pop culture and politics and what happens when they smack into each other at an alarming speed. I'm your host, Ira Madison III. I'm a television writer and Fall Out Boy fan.
I'm Louis Virtel. I'm a TV writer and Jane Fonda historian.
Let's get into it. Our guest this week is the writer and star of Hulu's Fire Island, and we have never met him before. He's never been on Keep It before. Both of these are lies. Welcome back to Keep It, Joel Kim Booster. Joel, I just remembered you were on our show when we did an episode at Bonnaroo.
At Bonnaroo. Absolute chaos.
Which I think, like, if we put all our demographics together and they're already interrelated, the one place we shouldn't be is Bonnaroo. So congrats to all of us for being there.
It was, I believe that night we saw Eminem in concert,
right,
which is definitely, you know, a number one bucket list item for all of us.
And for Eminem. He was like, please tell me they're there. Okay.
3 faggots in the audience. He was very excited.
Now, of course, Ira and I both fucking love Fire Island. Since we know you, we've heard updates about it for years and years. Such a pleasure to finally see it. Obviously, I have hundreds of questions, even though tons of all of our mutual friends are in it. And my first question is regarding that, which is, obviously, you could have made this movie if you just cast people you had never met before. But how important was it for you to make this movie with friends, and what did it add to have your actual friends in the movie?
So, you know, from the jump, it was always going to be a movie that was sort of honoring my friendship with Bowen. Like, that was first and foremost sort of the plan. Like, I set out to write sort of a story about our friendship. Like, so much of the movie is ripped from the headlines of our friendship. And that was always like, from the very beginning, he was attached, and that was the only friend that I knew was going to be in the movie. And beyond that, like, it really did come down to people auditioning and like, who was best for the role. Because, like, you know, we know this. I know every gay person in this industry. We all do. We know every gay, funny person in this industry. And I would have loved to cast truly all of them. But it was like a calculus of like who works together and like what does this friend group look like and what is the texture of the friend group. And so the only other friend that I was able to cast in this movie in sort of the main parts was Matt Rogers, who, you know, I wrote like sort of a toxic, annoying gay person. And and that was always earmarked for Matt.
Right.
So, yeah. And it was one of those things where all he had to do was like not fuck up the audition, and it was his. And, you know, he nailed it, of course. So that was like, so it was really nice to have the three of them on set. It was like a very grounding presence, because obviously it was like there was a lot of pressure going into making this movie for gay people, making this movie as like sort of, you know, one of the you know, big gay rom-coms that's coming out this year. It was a lot of pressure, and it was just nice to have like two of my best friends on set, just like sort of reminding me that it should be fun, you know. Mm-hmm. It should be fun, and it should be like not like, it's not the stakes felt lower when they were on set with me.
Mm-hmm. One thing I want to ask about Fire Island and it being, you know, this adaptation is, you know, your brand is being funny. Your brand is also being hot, as you say in your stand-up special, Psychosexual, which we will get to that as well. But this is an adaptation of Pride and Prejudice. And then there's also this lovely plot point in the film, you know, where two of the characters sort of bond over like an Alice Munro book, you know? So like, is reading part of your brand too? Or like, what was like the Jane Austen of it all that even got you to want to like adapt it in the first place? And like, what does like literature mean like as a part of your whole like culture world?
Yeah, no, I mean, reading is a big part of my life. I think like it's definitely not like the front and center, like marquee part of my personality that I put out there. Like, I haven't figured out a way to make reading an interesting point to bring up in my stand-up, you know? Like, I think It's not necessarily like there's not really an outlet for that. But yeah, I'm a big reader, and it's definitely like a big part of my personality. I don't think it's like something that a lot of people know about me unless they like clock me reading a book in Palm Springs or something like that. But yeah, I mean, the whole genesis of this movie was me bringing Pride and Prejudice to read on Fire Island, the first trip that we ever took with Bowen, you know, like that's where the whole thing started. And like, I wanted to try and infuse this character with like complications. Cause you know, like, listen, I've read a lot of critiques of the movie that are like, oh, this character is just a stereotype, just a typical, you know, frivolous gay guy who wants to have sex, and do drugs and all of this stuff. And I'm always like, did they not see the Alice Munro scene? Like, in that, like, yes, I'm a stereotype, but there's also more dimensions, I think, beyond, like, stereotypes exist because in part they are real, you know, like gay guys like that exist. But I think the problem with stereotypes is when we don't move beyond them. Like we all three in our little Zoom boxes probably all sort of exemplify some version of gay stereotypes to a degree, but we also have dimensions beyond that sort of complicate those stereotypes. And that's what I really wanted to do with the movie, is complicate the stereotypes a little bit. Because like when I hear like what is a stereotypical gay guy, I do recognize a lot of my friends, but then I also recognize that there are so many other things that make us more interesting beyond those things. So yeah, reading was I wanted to make sure that I honored, you know, that part of my personality and infused the movie a little bit with that.
Do you see other people with books on Fire Island?
Yeah, you see a couple people. Like the people that I go with, like, we're all hot gay guys who read. Like that is, and it's infuriating, but it is like, that is like a big part of, I think, everybody's trip is figuring out like what the beach read is, like who's bringing, you know, like conversations with friends versus like who's bringing some like, you know, a nonfiction essay book about gentrification. You know, it is like, it runs the gamut.
I just want to say, when I hear critiques about gay stereotypes, it's like, you know, there isn't a straight character in any movie that doesn't resemble a stereotype of some kind, right? There's this special stigma reserved for gay people having any recognizably common traits that we're all supposed to be afraid of. It's like, it's 2022. Gay people like having things in common, first of all. And two, when this call comes from inside the house and it's gay people being like, oh, that's just a stereotype, I think what they're not admitting is that there's a certain comfort in not being represented in movies. And then when you finally see it on screen, you want to shrug it off. You want to say, oh, no, that's not me at all, because you've been sort of luxuriating in feeling unknowable a little bit, you know?
Yo, absolutely. And I think like it's hard for us to see ourselves represented on screen because we're so used to having to cobble together representation from like 15 different actresses, you know, like that's what we've like, we're used to sort of projecting on our own experience onto other, you know, queering, you know, non-queer movies. That has been, you know, how we've navigated the representation game for so long. And then to see it sort of like baldly laid out as like, this should be you, this is reflecting your experience. I get why it sort of like rankles people initially, like, oh my God, that's not me. And I think it's weird that we're not afforded the same, I don't know, grace as like, you know, when people are like, oh, I see myself in Rooney Mara. Even though it's nothing like your experience, it's like, give me the same grace as Rooney Mara. That's, you know, put it on a t-shirt. But
did you know that Rooney Mara was supposed to be the star of Vox Lux?
Really?
Yes, which makes sense because the daughter character in it, who like she grows up to be or whatever, looks exactly like Rooney Mara.
Exactly, Rooney Mara. Yeah.
Anyway,
well,
important note.
As a Natalie stan, I'm glad that we live in this timeline.
Now, I want to say also just quickly about the island of Fire Island. There's a lot of things this movie just does journalistically to sell what it is, like the experience of being there that, like, I don't think even I would have guessed about had I not finally gone last year. Were there favorite parts of the Fire Island experience that you're glad are now committed to celluloid, that now people can just reach to and say, oh, that's correct, that happens at Fire Island?
You know what? I think my favorite aspect, because like the thing is about Fire Island is you're dipping in and out of these like parties to then this like incredible natural beauty that is surrounding you. Like the thing is about Fire Island is, yes, it's all gay, and yes, it's like there's the parties and all of that stuff, but it's also like incredibly beautiful to be there. Like there's so many like visually arresting moments, and the number one for me is like going from tea, like being all like fucked up at tea, and then traipsing on down to the boardwalk or the dock to see the sunset. Like that is my favorite moment of every Fire Island trip, is watching the sunset from that dock, and like getting to have two very different versions of that experience in the movie was so important to me, because those are the moments where it's like that dichotomy of like, oh, we were just like surrounded by gay men with their shirts off, listening to bad pop music, drinking, and now we're like sitting watching like one of the most beautiful sunsets you'll ever see, like surrounded by your best friends. Like it is those sorts of moments that really make the island really, really special to me.
I mean, I'm going for the first time for the 4th of July, so I'm like looking forward to like finding out, you know, what's representative versus, you know, what I get to experience myself. But like, I love that of what you were just describing. You know, I feel like one thing I really enjoy about your comedy and just sort of your writing is just sort of like this very frankness about like just who you are as a person. And, you know, you'll make jokes, you know, about sex, but you'll make jokes about like doing ketamine and other things like that. And I feel like those are moments that can, you know, be like, oh, you know, you're talking about a party culture, but there can also be moments that lead to, you know, a beautiful moment, like still being awake, you know, like to see like the sunrise, you know, like I thought about that recently. I was just in Barcelona for this music festival, you know, and I was there with friends, and, you know, we were like, we were doing drugs and shit. But then like it ends with, it's like 7 a.m. and you get to walk to the beach in Barcelona and you're watching the sunrise. And it's like, I think those are some of the beautiful moments that people miss out when they think that people are just sort of writing about and representing like toxic sort of gay drug culture on film.
Yeah. And the thing is too, like, I always want to like preface my comedy, like, I'm not trying to sell people on my lifestyle. I'm just like, I'm not interested in like hiding parts of myself, to like only like sell one part of my life. Like, I'm not like, when I talk about ketamine on stage, it's because I had a funny thought. It's not because I think everyone should be doing ketamine, or even I try to like take the judgment of the lifestyle out of it, because it's just not like, it's just a part of my life. And so like, if I have like every comic gets to talk about their lives in, you know, whatever funny take they have. But for some reason, it's like a little more loaded when I do it, because it's like, oh, I'm gay, and so now everyone thinks gay people are going to be doing ketamine, and that's not our problem to fix. Like if a straight person watches my act and walks away and thinks like, wow, are all gay people vapid party monsters? Like that's not, if all it took was one stand-up set to get a straight person to think that, that's not our problem. That is a straight problem. That is a straight issue to fix, not ours, you know? And that's why I'm so frustrated sometimes when I see gay people like feeding into that.
You just brought up audiences in general, which is something I wanted to talk about. It feels like it's a recent phenomenon that a gay comic could go and perform, and most of the time the audience will be filled maybe with queer people, maybe some straight women too. But do you cherish that demographic in particular? Like when you perform, are you grateful to see a room full of gay people, or are you like, oh, I wish it was more mixed or something? I don't know.
It depends. So like, it's interesting. I'm in San Diego right now doing shows. And last night, I think because of the movie's release, like I'm still at this point in my career, when I go to comedy clubs, like it is maybe 50% people there to see me and 50% people who are there because they like the club or they just wanted to go out for a fun night. And so like I am often performing for a very, very mixed crowd of people. And, you know, I don't really adjust my set for the straight people in the audience, but I will say last night was the first time, it was mostly, I think there were maybe 3 straight guys. Like we did like a poll, because one of my openers was a straight man, and he went out and he was doing his regular set, and it wasn't necessarily working because the audience was of like 200 people. there were only 3 straight men in the audience. And it was so interesting because he came backstage and he was like, I've never felt so nervous and so scared doing stand-up in years and years and years. And I was like, you realize that is how I feel every time I go up to a predominantly straight audience, like trying to figure out like if my references are going to hit, like if what I should adjust and how I should like deal with that. And it's like, it was so interesting to me to see a straight person experience that for the very first time. I will say, and this is something that Guy Branum has said a lot, and I do think it's changing with our generation, but like when I perform on, say, like a gay cruise to mostly older gay men who are sort of, you know, Gen X and above, it is a little difficult because I do find that gay men are much more judgmental of other gay men than they are of maybe a female comedian, you know, like Guy Branum said it, you know, like most gay men, like unless they can completely sexualize you and are watching you as like a go-go boy or a stripper, or completely desexualize you as like a drag queen, they don't know how to interact with gay men while they're watching them on stage, you know, and even in movies. And I think that's part of what we're seeing, like from the reaction to Fire Island too, is that there's a certain level of like we do not have the training because we're just now seeing representation. We don't know how to interact with ourselves on screen or as representatives. So when like I do a gay cruise, it's so funny because like they want Kathy Griffin, they don't want me, you know? And so I sometimes get more nervous in front of gay audiences than I do in front of straight audiences.
I have to tell you, I'm not curious to see Kathy Griffin on Ketamine. I love the woman to death. I just think that would be bad news for a lot of us. Couldn't love her more, honestly. I just think it means danger.
That's what she was on when she did the Trump photo. Louis.
Now I know. That's right.
Deep gay hole.
I mean, well, speaking of representation and like straight people and audiences, one bit that you have in your Netflix special, Psychosexual, is, you know, as you point out this straight white guy, Ben, and like get his reactions during your show. And I want to also ask about, you mentioned that, you know, like you're a person who like reads the comments a lot. And, you know, I assume you still did that with Fire Island, you know, like how do you sort of get in your mind, you know, when you're working on something, or just maybe once it comes out, you know, you're thinking about like, I'm thinking about how gay people are going to be responding to this. And then also the idea, like I'm thinking about how like Asian people are going to respond to this, you know, particularly I love in your Vulture interview, you know, you talk about, you know, like how you didn't need like a medal for casting like an Asian love interest, but you know, like with the film and then like, you know, with your jokes, you know, about your very lovely boyfriend who we love, you know, he's fantastic, you know, but like, are you in your mind thinking about, you know, like I'm making these jokes, you know, about like whiteness and representation and culture, and like people are still gonna like point out like, but he has a white boyfriend, or if Conrad hadn't been cast in the film, they'd be pointing out like, okay, but the love interest is white. Like, is that something you're thinking about constantly?
Yeah, I'm definitely thinking about it a lot. And this is the thing, is that like, I really do appreciate engaging with criticism in my work, you know, like I think a large part of the special is in response to criticism that I've received from all corners of, you know, identity, like from Asian people, from gay people, from straight people, you know, like it's interesting for me to engage with the good faith critiques, I think, of my work. There's definitely tons of bad faith critiques that I think ascribe like negative intention to me as a person, that like it's easy to dismiss that. But I am definitely like, I'm constantly thinking about the ways in which I am perceived as a comedian, to try and like not stay ahead of it, but just also like I think it's useful to know like how people are absorbing your work and like how you're being perceived. But I will say there is like a fine line, and it can drive you a little crazy. Like Andrew on the set of the movie, I would like spin out constantly about like, oh, how is this going to be perceived? How is this going to be taken? And he would just like sort of like put his hand on my shoulder and be like, Joel, you cannot write this movie for Twitter. You can't do it. You like, if you like, it's a losing game, to try and stay ahead of whatever the discourse is going to be on Twitter, a very small subsection of the people that are actually going to watch this movie. And you just have to try and tell like an honest story. And so it is like a fine line. Oftentimes I do find like, especially with regard to the special, like, it is my special. This hour special is like a direct response to commentary around my work previous to this, because and frustrations around like the representation conversation in general. Like, it is so frustrating for me that I cannot just tell a joke in a vacuum and like have it be judged on the merits of whether or not it makes this person laugh or not, which is like what most straight white guys get to go out there and make their jokes. And the only metric it's judged on is if people laugh or not. Like, for me though, it's like, am I representing Asian people well? Am I representing gay people well? You know, and it's so frustrating, and it's like such a double-edged sword, because I get people come up to me all the time and they're like, oh, thank you for representing our community. Thank you for being a representative. And it's like, it makes me so stressed out, because I'm like, that's not what I want to do necessarily. Like, I wish there were dozens of me out there, so that like I was just one other face in a sea of gay Asian comedians, so that, you know, it's not like on me to try and be the best representative that I can be for this community. And I'm lucky that there are more and more and more of us coming up right now. Like, I can name a bunch of them. Like, there's like so many. Like, Jess Tom is somebody that comes to mind who I think is an amazing comedian who's also doing a lot of the similar work. Obviously, Bowen is in the same space as I am. But it's like, I just wish that like, it's the scarcity politics of it, because I think the mainstream like industry is like sort of presenting me as the answer for like, oh, you said you weren't represented enough. Well, here's Joel Kim Booster. And it's like, no, there has to be more than one of me. Like, if I'm being pushed in front of people, like, of course there's going to be resentment from certain like corners of the Asian community or the gay community who don't see themselves represented in my work. Like, and again, it's not like my problem, and it's not even necessarily like gay people or Asian people's problems. It's the mainstream like Hollywood narrative, like saying that is the problem.
Now, speaking of that kind of stress, it feels to me like at this particular juncture, you're poised to, I don't know about do what you want, but do one of a number of things. Like, I'm sure people want you to make a sequel to this, or follow it up with something similar, or you can probably act in what you want to do, or, you know, there's any number of options. And I was wondering, is that exciting, or just a new version of stress, having to navigate where you quote unquote belong after this?
Yeah, it isn't. It's my bad brain like is full of anxiety now. I think it's like, I wish I could just enjoy this moment a little bit more. But like, previous to the movie coming out, I was like, oh my God, everyone's going to hate this. No one's going to like this. No one's going to like this. And now that it's come out and the reception has been mostly positive, all I can think of is like, well, whatever you do next is going to be shit. It will never amount to the same, like, it'll never be as good as like what Fire Island or whatever you've just done. And so I'm trying to just like take a step back and like really assess like what I actually want to do next, and like what I actually want to write next. I think like a sequel is such a funny idea to me, and it's exciting, but it's also like, I don't necessarily want to be known as the gay destination vacation writer for the rest of my career. I'd like to maybe pivot into something else. So I'm just trying to figure out like what even the options are. Cause this is the thing, like, I've been here before. Like, I think right around the same time I was on the show last time, I was like poised to be on an NBC sitcom, and people were like, this is it. This is going to change your life. And then that show flopped hard, and, you know, nothing really changed. And so I'm very weary of being like, yeah, like when people say like, this is it, this is going to change everything for you. I'm sort of like, I'm going to like sort of wait and see, and I'll believe it when I see it sort of vibe.
Let me just say about destination cinema, though, if you merged with the Best Exotic Marigold franchise, I feel like everybody wins. You and Maggie, yes. You know, long stairs, sideways stairs, it speaks to me.
That's exactly where I need to go.
You know what? I do want to see a gay cruise something though, because you made Fire Island look amazing. You made Fire Island look beautiful, and I can't wait to go. But I am iffy on cruises, gay or not, and I feel like maybe you could change my mind.
I'm definitely gonna do like the gay remake of Murder on the Nile, but set on Atlantis cruise. Yes. You know, like that's the next move, is because I have actually always wanted to solve a murder on a cruise, like just in my personal life, and so I think like you know, that's definitely, I think the next move for me is Murder on an Atlantis cruise for sure.
Also,
Great.
because then you could have Sophie Okanedo's character in Death on the Nile be the entertainment on the gay cruise.
Yeah.
Like, she would still be that person.
Yeah. And you could get Gal Gadot to say something like, I don't know, there's enough poppers to fill the Nile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which that would just be true. It would just be true. Yeah.
It would actually be true. I will say, like, the gay cruises, the wildest they get the wildest people to perform. Like, every time I go on, it's like, yeah, the entertainment this week is Leanne Rimes, and it's like, how the fuck did you get Leanne Rimes to come on this gay cruise? And then you see like a stadium full of gay men chanting Leanne's name, and you're like, oh, this is how you get Leanne Rimes. Like, this is like I was the first cruise I ever did. Vanessa Williams came on, and I was like, how did they get Vanessa Williams to do a gay cruise? And then she comes out for her performance, and she's like, I'm not doing any covers tonight. I'm only doing originals. And I was like, well, this is how you get Vanessa Williams to do the gay cruise. It's the only place where you could fill a stadium full of people to listen to her original songs.
Wow. You got a lot of moody prog rock or something from Vanessa Williams? That's too bad. Yeah.
You're like, no Colors of the Wind? Seriously? Okay.
All right, I get it. Gay cruises are the soap dish mall scene for all female performers. Thank you so much for being here, Joel. And congrats
Thanks for having
on Fire
me.
Island.
I appreciate that. I will see you both on Fire Island.
And also probably just everywhere else. I have bad news for you. So.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah.